coming up. Opposition party candidate and former President John Mahama is declared the official winner of the Ghanaian presidential election, defeating the ruling party candidate, Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia. What's next for U.S.-based troops in war-torn Syria? We'll have a report from the Pentagon. And the annual March for Babies in Washington, D.C. draws attention to critical maternal and child health issues. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Ghana's opposition leader John Mahama has officially won the presidential election, securing nearly 57% of the vote. Mahama's campaign prioritized the economy and largely appealed to young Ghanaians who saw the vote as a way out of the economic crisis. VOA's Paul Ndiho reports from Accra.
Celebrations erupted at John Mahama's election campaign headquarters, where supporters viewed Mahama's victory as Jean Mensah, chairperson of the Electoral Commission of Ghana, announced the election results.
I have the singular honor as the returning officer of the 2024 presidential election to declare His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as the winner of the 2024 presidential election and the President-elect of the Republic of Ghana.
This victory marks a significant comeback for President-elect John Dramani Mahama. His supporters celebrated at his campaign offices.
The Electoral Commission has come out to declare him the winner of the 2024 general election. And we thank God for this victory. We've worked so hard from day one up to today that the Electoral Commission has declared him as the presidential elect for Ghana.
We are excited because our party won. The NDC has won. The policies of NDC actually sank into people's head, and the whole Ghanaians were fighting for change. And change has really come for us. So that's how come we are here to celebrate with our incoming president-elect, John Dramani Mahama.
I'm here to celebrate the victory of the NDC, our great party. We've suffered for 8 years, and now God has answered our prayers, and God answered it massively.
And so we are just here to celebrate and let the old man know that we truly appreciate him for all he's done for Ghana, and the comeback that is going to be better than the earlier ones.
According to Patrick Opoku, assuming an economist and lecturer at the University of Ghana, voter discontent with the government's economic management and rising living costs drove the electorate's decision.
Since 2022, the Ghanaian economy has been through a series of crises, some of the worst crises that we've seen in our generation. And it's been clear that the government has really struggled to address the major issues. I think a combination of higher prices, depreciating currency, and a general sense of widespread corruption in the public sector, all of these contributed to the elections, and it's not very surprising how it turned out.
The election ended nearly 8 years of NPP rule under President Nana Akufo-Addo, whose constitutional allowable term ends in January, and whose administration faced severe economic turmoil. Faith Tapa, former Ghanaian Minister for Finance, says the economy and the rising cost of living became pivotal issues for voters, and that's why they voted massively for NDC.
When certain economic performance begin to affect transport fares, basic food in our local markets, the rest, then you know that the economy is in some difficulty. So to give you an indication of how bad things have been, we defaulted on our debt.
With celebrations likely to continue across Ghana, the attention now turns to how Mahama's administration will address the nation's pressing issues. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Accra, Ghana.
The fall of Damascus is raising concerns about what's next for U.S. troops based in the war-torn country who have been working with allies to keep Islamic State from resurging. VOA's Kalabab has more from the Pentagon.
Syrians in Damascus reacting to a world without the Assad regime in power, a first since 1971.
It's impossible not to be moved by the scenes of jubilation the scenes of relief coming out of Syria. The end of this regime is a defeat for all who enabled its barbarity and its corruption, none more than Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. So this moment presents a historic opportunity, but it also carries considerable risks.
Risk that U.S. forces aimed to mitigate this week, striking 75 Islamic State targets in central Syria with B-52 bombers, fighter jets, and A-10 combat aircraft. A move meant to ensure the terror group won't try to take advantage of the situation.
The real danger moving forward over the next 48 hours is that if the Islamic State escapes its prison camp at Al-Hul, then you could have thousands of militants, thousands of extremists, not only spreading across Syria and the Middle East, but also Turkey and Europe as well.
The U.S. military has about 900 troops in Syria to help Syrian Democratic Forces prevent Islamic State from resurging, with officials stating three primary interests now that the Assad regime has fallen.
Our soldiers and personnel and all are protected. We want to make sure that our allies are safe and secure. We want to make sure that there isn't a humanitarian catastrophe.
The ousted former president has fled to Moscow. Analysts say the fall of Syria has weakened Russia along with Iran.
They've lost Hezbollah, or at least the ability to supply them. They've lost Syria. The question now is whether they can keep their grip on the Houthis, or whether other states in the region, Saudi Arabia, for example, are going to smell blood in the water.
The Pentagon says communication with allies is key. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has spoken with his Turkish counterpart about the ongoing Syrian developments. CENTCOM Commander General Eric Kurilla is in the region. He has met with Jordanian allies to discuss Syria, and officials say he plans to meet with other regional allies in the coming days. Carla Babb, VOA News, the Pentagon.
For analysis on Bashar al-Assad's ouster as Syrian president, I'm joined live from here in Washington by Khalil Jashan, Executive Director of the Arab Center. Mr. Jashan, welcome to Africa 54. Let's hit the road. Was there any specific incident that triggered Bashar al-Assad's ouster?
I don't think there was a special incident of any sort that surprised everybody. Very few people anticipated the quick and total collapse of the regime, but it's been happening over the past 12, 13 years of civil strife in Syria. Clearly, the Assad dynasty, and particularly Bashar al-Assad's regime, have exhausted, if you will, their usefulness to the citizenry of Syria. Opposition continued to grow throughout this period, and the balance, the military balance of power that has been changing throughout the region seems to have tipped the strategic balance inside Syria in favor of the rebels against the regime.
So who is in charge of Syria as we speak?
That's a good question. Essentially, I would say it's the rebels, which is not necessarily one cohesive or unified group. It's an umbrella of opposition groups, armed opposition groups, led essentially by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Liberation of Sham or Syria organization, headed by Abu Muhammad al-Julani for the past at least 8-9 years. And his real name is Ahmed Hussein al-Shara. And of course, he is, like I said, in coalition. He heads a coalition of groups, at least 4 or 5 of them, that seem to, thus far, share responsibility over law and order in Syria until the dust settles from this coup.
Jashan, we're learning, of course, that Assad was given asylum with his family in Moscow. The question is, do we know if they had existing relationships between himself and Russian President Vladimir Putin?
Of course, they have. They've had a very close relationship. They have been meeting on a regular basis throughout the years, including in recent months, to compare notes. There has been some differences in recent weeks over what to do, some pressure from Moscow with regards to the need for change in Syria to preserve, if you will, the Assad regime, but that did not materialize, and it ended up in the results that we are witnessing today, with Moscow having to give him a humanitarian asylum with his family in Russia.
What more do you know about the two Syrian military officials, Jamil Hassan and Abdul Salam Mahmoud, who were indicted by the U.S. Justice Department?
Well, these two were indicted by the U.S. Justice Department, but there is actually a long list of people accused of crimes against humanity, people from the Syrian intelligence, people from the Syrian military, and others that have abused civil rights and human rights for many, many years in Syria. And I assume that all these people will probably be facing additional charges now that the regime has collapsed by international court, criminal court, and court of justice. There has to be some form of accountability for all these crimes over the past 50 years.
Now, we woke up this morning with a different news where Israel has also had heavy airstrikes inside Syria. Do we know why Israel is hitting Syria? We know of the war between Israel and Hamas. What more do you know?
Well, essentially, I think Israel, like other powers in the region, are basically trying to put their own spin and to benefit from this sudden change in Syria. And as always, Israel's insatiable appetite for Arab territory, they have extended, if you will, their military control over the zone, the safety zone between the two countries that they agreed to keep unarmed since 1974, actually. And Israel is taking liberty, if you will, at bombing all kinds of targets, military targets, intelligence targets in Syria, pretending that there are weapons that they would not like, what they prefer not to see fall into the hands of the rebels. But if these weapons were really indeed dangerous to Israel, why didn't they bomb him before? Were they safe under Bashar al-Assad?
Wow. Halil, we're very, very thankful for your insight into what's happening in Syria and the surrounding countries. Halil Jashan is Executive Director of the Arab Center here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation has celebrated its 5th anniversary as the primary lender and investor for the United States abroad. The group has brought over $13 billion in investment opportunities to the African continent. This report was produced by VOA's Antonella Bruto and Philip Alexiou.
Since its inception in 2019, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation has been able to affect the lives of 200 million people around the world. Scott Nathan is the CEO of DFC and says these first 5 years have made DFC a major player in the global development finance landscape.
Our portfolio stands today at well over $50 billion, double where it was when we started in 2020. We're active in 114 countries, and in 2024, we committed to $12.1 billion in new transactions. That's 2.5 times the level of activity just 5 years earlier.
The money of mobilized capital comes through investments, loans, and private equity coming together in key areas around the world. DFC invests in healthcare services, infrastructure, energy, clean water, and the infusion of monies to help small businesses. They have projects in a dozen African countries, including the ambitious construction of a 105-megawatt power plant in Freetown, where rolling blackouts are common. Chief Minister of Sierra Leone, David Manina Singh, says his country is one of the top countries that has really large investments from DFC that affect people's lives.
This will increase the base load in the country. This will expand energy access for companies, for private sector. And if you look at infrastructure, we've also been able to get lots of resources, north of 150 million for the investment in the new airport. This will allow for more investment in the country as well. There are new hotels already coming up, creating jobs. So DFC has really worked with Sierra Leone to ensure the private sector can be present in the tune of over 600 million over the last couple of years.
The power plant is expected to take about 3 years to build and will become Sierra Leone's main source of power generation upon completion. Moinina Sengeh says the DFC understands the need for energy and its value to economic development.
We will put a hub there for liquid gas, and that will mean we can supply mining companies, we can supply Guinea and Liberia, and infrastructure that is essential for our own development. For us, we think about this as the U.S. government and DFC working with Sierra Leone to say, we believe in you, we believe in your future, and we're not going to do it by aid, we're going to do it by investing in what matters for you and your people, and that's providing reliable and affordable energy.
China's Africa presence and projects like the Belt and Road Initiative have moved the U.S. to be more competitive in the area of natural resource demand. Flores L. Lizer is the president and CEO of Corporate Council on Africa.
Right now, China is the main provider of those processed critical minerals, many of which, or most of which, comes from the continent. So these projects are important not only for the Africans, but also important for the United States as well.
Philip Alexio, VOA News, Washington.
India is not supporting the creation of a shared currency among the 9-nation BRICS grouping, but it is trying to promote trade in its local currency, according to analysts in New Delhi. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump recently warned BRICS nations against efforts to replace the dollar with an alternative currency. Anjana Pasricha reports from New Delhi.
India is not pursuing the creation of a common BRICS currency, a potential initiative that has met with strong pushback from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. He has threatened 100% tariffs on products from the 9-member BRICS bloc if it replaces the U.S. dollar with another currency or backs an alternative to the greenback. Analysts say mistrust and differences between major BRICS members such as India and China are a huge stumbling block in moving ahead with a shared currency.
India is not supportive of this particular initiative. Any common currency is not going to help anyone. Only the dominant countries like China ultimately will dictate. So it is very difficult to develop a consensus to have a common currency.
The core BRICS group, China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa, expanded this year to include Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and Egypt. Talk of a BRICS currency gained some momentum in 2022 after the US imposed sanctions on Russia following the Ukraine war and growing tensions between the West and China. But the alliance of emerging countries is too diverse to make a shared currency viable.
We don't have a common market. We don't have any common trade policy. We have nothing in common.
However, India and some other BRICS countries have stepped up efforts to trade in their local currencies to reduce dependency on the US dollar.
There are 17 countries that have been identified by the government of India with whom India wants to trade in either rupees or a bilateral currency.
Those countries include Russia. New Delhi, which did not join US sanctions, is paying for its massive oil imports from Moscow in rupees. But the rupee trade also presents problems.
India runs a huge trade deficit vis-a-vis Russia, which means that when India is buying a lot of oil from Russia and it is paying in rupees, Russia doesn't know what to do with the whole stock of rupees that it is holding now.
Indian External Affairs Minister Subramanian Jaishankar has said that moving away from the greenback is not part of India's economic policy. That, say analysts, is because India's strategic interests are generally aligned with the US. Anjana Pasricha, VOA News, New Delhi.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll tell you about the annual March for Babies here in Washington. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, Ghana voted for change. Opposition leader and former President John Mahama defeated Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia in last Saturday's elections.
I'm committed to waging a relentless war on corruption
Will the new president be able to contain the severe economic crisis plaguing his country? Join me, Vincent Makori, and my guests for an in-depth look into the challenges facing President-elect Mahama.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Lynn Mahmoudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, police in Kenya threw tear gas canisters at hundreds of protesters against gender-based violence or femicide in Nairobi on Tuesday. Police also arrested an unknown number of people. Protesters chanted "Stop Femicide" before they were dispersed by police. Police say 97 women have been killed since August, with most cases involving male partners. South Sudanese President Salva Kiir has fired the head of the country's military, the police chief, and the central bank governor, according to an announcement made on the state-owned broadcaster SSBC. Kiir made the announcement late Monday and gave no reasons for the dismissals. Kiir has appointed Paul Nang Majok as the Army's Chief of Defense Forces, replacing General Santino Wall. And France says it has flown out the 2 Mirage fighter jets it had stationed in Chad. The move Tuesday signals the beginning of the withdrawal of its military forces from the African country. French officials say negotiations with Chadian authorities are continuing on how and when France might withdraw other members of its 1,000-strong force in the country. Every year, the annual March for Babies in Washington, D.C. draws attention to critical maternal and child health care issues such as premature birth. People from all walks of life joined forces recently to help lower the incidence of maternal and infant mortality.
Families, friends, advocates, and health professionals have gathered here in downtown Washington, D.C. for a common cause to raise awareness and show support for the health and survival of mothers and infants. Launched more than 50 years ago by U.S. nonprofit organization March of Dimes, the annual March for Babies has become a symbol of hope and action in communities across the United States.
We are here because Zeta has a long-standing relationship with the March of Dimes. So we believe that marching helps to save babies' lives. We've done this for a long, long time. We raise money all over the country, all over the world for this purpose. And so we come out in numbers to show our support. We know that with just a little bit of preventative care, babies can live and can thrive.
The World Health Organization says each year more than 300,000 women die due to complications of pregnancy and childbirth, and 2.5 million babies die during the first month of life. Data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reveals that the U.S. is the country with the highest rate of maternal death of any high-income nation, and there are significant racial and ethnic disparities.
1 in 10 babies is born prematurely. Black babies are 2 times more likely not to make their first birthday. So we have a lot to do. Maternal death in this country is higher for Black and brown moms. So you're talking about 2.4 times more likely.
March for Babies has garnered support from local businesses and corporate sponsors such as ASRC Federal.
One of the things that we love about the March of Dimes is the focus on maternal equity and health equity, and looking at how to support women, Alaskan Native women, women of color, in order to ensure that all moms and babies have a chance, a fighting chance.
For families who have experienced the challenges of premature birth firsthand, March for Babies is a chance to share their stories and advocate for better care.
We were not expected to deliver a baby that would be breathing on her own. She was actually supposed to not survive birth. And throughout the journey, like I said, 118 days in 2 different NICUs, in-state and out-of-state. So having to navigate that, still working, we're both full-time workers, and having to navigate that has been an extreme journey. And it just, her care is different. We always have to be vigilant and remain, always aware of like the changes in her body. Although she is the only surviving and thriving, the journey continues.
Participants like Jeffrey, who benefited from the care supported by March of Dimes, find the event deeply personal and meaningful.
I was born at 35 weeks and had to spend a week in the NICU. So I personally benefited from a lot of the science and research for treatments that the March of Dimes has funded over all these decades.
Alpha Phi Alpha is a fraternity, a social organization known as a Greek organization at a college or university for male students.
It is so important that we make the choices around healthy pregnancies and mothers being able to bring and deliver healthy babies. And the work that March of Dimes does is, it's critical to our future. So our fraternity had a history of understanding what it means to be servants of all, to not only understand their role as leaders, but also as partners.
I think it's important that we support in a number of ways. Through our fundraising opportunities, because obviously healthy babies are brought about because mothers are doing the right thing to take care of themselves. We can also look at legislation and be in support of those issues that women are fighting for.
Funds raised during March for Babies each year helps provide services such as mobile health clinic for prenatal care, conduct research, and advocate for policies that promote maternal and child health. Linor Mudu, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.